I was only 3 years old. He said, I'm going to be his wife.
I was not allowed to cut my hair, and I had to wear long dresses. Everything in my life was completely controlled.
These 3 cult survivors share their story of escape.
I used to get beaten up on occasion for not being happy about terrorist attacks.
And what life is really like when you try to leave. Serena was born into the Children of God cult, currently known as the Family.
When David Berg started the cult started off as a very pious Christian group. As time went on, it started becoming evil.
And as soon as she was born, Serena was given to another couple to raise.
My mother lived in the same home, but because she was in such a high leadership position, I saw her maybe once a day. My father worked directly for Berg as his errand boy. My memories are extremely traumatic for me. I remember getting beaten a lot.
And she saw things no child should ever be exposed to.
To me, Berg was a dirty old man. I remember walking into rooms and there were orgies going on. I would walk into a basement and they would be filming videos that were not appropriate for children to see. David Berg would send for me. We would have to lay in bed together and cuddle. He drank a lot. He smelled. He yelled at people and he was scary. I was so secluded and I had no contact with the outside world. I didn't understand what life was like. I didn't know anyone who had left the cult until my older sister actually left. She started sending me pictures of a world outside the cult.
It was only later that Serena was finally able to find her way out. But her life was never the same.
I was able to finally leave when I turned 18. When I left the cult, I was in fight or flight mode. I had $15 to my name. I didn't have a bank account and I didn't exist in the USA school system.
And when she did have the courage to speak out, Serena was viciously attacked.
I was called a liar. I was called a narcissist. When I finally got out of that, and that's when I started just living by my own rules, and I started changing my thoughts from me being a victim to being a survivor to now being a thriver.
David Berg died in 1994. Despite numerous investigations and claims by witnesses, Berg was never charged with a crime related to child sexual abuse, much like Serena Jules also grew up in a cult.
I grew up in IBLP, which is short for Institute and Basic Life Principles, a cult that is led by Bill Gothard.
And she was taught some very extreme views.
I was taught that people in the outside world were all going to hell. I was not allowed to cut my hair, and I had to wear long dresses. Everything in my life was completely controlled. There's multiple times where I thought that I would be better off dead.
Abused and neglected by her parents.
My dad especially would throw me onto the ground, drag me from room to room. They would tell me that I would never have friends when I grew up.
Jewel was completely isolated.
I had very, very little contact with anybody. They teach that men are superior to women and that women should be stay-at-home wives and mothers. To me, that way of life was completely normal. It was all that I knew.
When Jules was 17, she joined the Police Explorer Post, which is when she realized there was another way of life out there.
I just didn't want to be a piece of property anymore. I wanted to be my own human. And also, I realized that I was gay, and that's definitely not something that was allowed in IBLP. I kind of started to leave when I was 18. I moved out of my parents' house, and I moved in with another family. My bio parents started stalking me. They were constantly showing up at my work, at my home. I had to barricade myself in the basement one day because they entered the home without permission. I was constantly scared for my safety. When I was about 20 years old, I came out, and that's the day that I was completely shunned by my adopted family. It was very difficult since I didn't have much support, learning how to make decisions for myself, something that I still struggle with. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll make the wrong decision, but it's an opportunity that I never had before, and it's very exciting.
Now Jules attempts to raise awareness of surviving a cult.
I try to educate the officers that I work with so that they can understand how to recognize people that might be in cults and how to better help them.
For Catherine, she was forced to think and behave a certain way because her father was a cult leader.
My father was a tyrant. He was a bully and he enjoyed putting people down. So the ideology of the cult was communist. We were not allowed to interact with other people. He believed he could make things happen. Like if there was an earthquake in America, that was because the landlord had demanded rent from us. I used to get condemned and even beaten up on occasion for not being happy about terrorist attacks.
Finally, the cult members quietly started revolting.
What happened was one of the cult members started to become very disenfranchised with the situation. She couldn't stand it anymore. We decided that we need to get a mobile phone. One day when we were watching the 6 o'clock news, there was an item about false marriages, and on the screen, there was a helpline number.
And Catherine thought this was her opportunity to try and escape.
We thought, this may not be right, but we probably should memorize it just in case. And the next time when my dad and stepmom went out, we called it. And, well, we managed to arrange for people to come and pick us up on a day when my dad and stepmother went out shopping. We went out of the house and met these people around the corner on the 25th of October 2013. Then a month later, my dad and stepmother were arrested. My dad was convicted and sentenced to 23 years in prison.
Although these 3 young girls endured an unimaginable amount of pain in their childhood, they are speaking out today so that others don't have to go through the same trauma.
I wanted to tell my story because for so long I had been denied a voice, and it was like I wanted to tell my side of the story and wanted people to know about what was actually going on.
It was a huge struggle, and I had to figure out everything on my own. It took years and years and years of therapy, a lot of energy work.
I leaned on the support that I did have. I've made my own family in the outside world. I attempt to raise awareness and help people who were raised in those situations to know that they're not alone and that there is another way of life out there.
I am seen. Are you?